Okay, it says you're live. Okay. Now. Okay, it says I'm live now. Yeah, okay, I know it is because it's showing it to me. Alright, well, good deal. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Cripple Connection podcast. My name is Cody Lashley. It's been a minute since we did this, but we are back with some great news, fun news, I'd say, as we approach a brand new console. As always, I'm going to do it with my man, my compadre, my crippled brother from another able-bodied mother, Jeffrey Redmond. What's up, bro?
Not much, man. I've missed doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's fun. I'm glad we can come back and do another episode. This is episode 28. If you like what we do, hit the like and subscribe button. Jeffrey, we've been waiting so long to do this. This is like the fifth time that we've tried to do this show.
Yeah, technical difficulties, man.
Yeah, brand new Streamlabs updates, YouTube updates, all kind of different crazy shit. But let's talk a little bit about the PlayStation 5, Jeffrey, because there was actually a few bits of news regarding the PlayStation. One, the PlayStation 5's pre-order units matched that sold of the PlayStation 4. So it's a big hit. It's a huge success. PlayStation is once again, in my mind, poised to take the #1 spot as just the most selling, most popular console. Even in spite of some other news, and let's start with the fun, more lighthearted news, and then we'll kind of get to the one that's more disappointing. Although you can clearly read them on my screen if you wanted. But
hang on,
yeah.
Joey says he hears an echo, so hang on. I'm gonna ask him if he still hears it.
But yeah, that's when it just started because I had.
Oh, okay.
In order to watch the video and check the comments, I have to go to the stream, and it picks up the video from.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
yeah, so
that
it picks up on both
now. Joey, if it still persists, let us know.
Yeah, for sure. What's up, by the way, Joey? Good to talk to you, man. Good to hear from you. By the way, I should mention, actually, before we go any further, let me actually stop sharing this. It's Guy Fawkes Day.
Yes.
And we're still currently waiting to find out who the next president of the United States is. And I just, it's November 5th, man. Remember the 5th of November. Jeffrey, do you know the poem? Why don't you give it to him?
So, forget my dramatic reading skills. Remember, the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
And what afterwards when it feels like the country is in the midst of a fucking potential civil war, bro? It's crazy right now, man. But, yeah, listen, we hope to be your escape today and just talk some video games and talk a little Final Fantasy because I'm a Final Fantasy nerd and it's what I like to talk about. So, Jeffrey, but let's first, let's do this. Let's talk about how big this fucking PlayStation is because it is absolutely enormous. And I didn't really even understand how big the console was until I started seeing photos like this.
Oh my god, look at the dog picture.
Yeah, I know. It puts a dog next to it. There's a chihuahua. Like, it's a tall console.
Oh my god.
I don't have the photos up right now, but there were pictures of it next to, the Gorgons, Texas. The memes.
Oh my god.
The memes went absolutely crazy. A PlayStation 5 Planet comparison. Yeah, there was some really cool ones, but yeah, man, I just didn't expect it to be this big. I mean, Jeffrey, do you think how much does this matter? Like, is there ever going to be anyone that's like, it takes up too much space, or it's too ugly?
Yeah, I'm the perfect person to ask because I have a very limited amount of space for my consoles and stuff, and the way I have it set up, I'm afraid now because I have to lay my consoles horizontally. So I am
Right, me
afraid
too.
now that where my PS4 currently sits, I will not be able to put my PS5 in
You
that
have
same
to
slot.
you have to do some rearranging, huh?
Yeah, most definitely. And as a disabled person, that is never a fun thing, let me assure you. Uh,
Right.
so, um, I mean, I think for people with limited desk space, it is going to be an issue. Obviously, anybody who's able-bodied can just, get up and move shit the way that needs to be done. But, not everybody has like these hulking places for an entertainment center. My bedroom is also my gaming room, so uh, my space is extremely limited, and I think at some point size does matter, despite what they say.
You
You
damn
know,
size queen.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it is pretty hulking, but it can be stood vertically as well. So I don't know. I'll literally have to wait and see when I get one. Either that or measure the dimensions and figure it out beforehand. But I'm not going to do that right now. I don't have a tape measure with me. But uh, it that it is a concern. It truly is.
I mean, for me, I don't know. By the way, it's so crazy that you look like you have a person right over your shoulder.
I
That's
know.
like
I know. I was just going to
that's like
mention
more
that.
in front than you. Anyway, I'm an idiot.
It's creepy as hell.
But no. So I mean, I don't know. I understand. Like, actually, I'm just gonna go ahead and segue into this other story because it's kind of why I'm disappointed in how big it is. It's like if
Yep.
all that big, uh, you know, it looks big and imposing, and yet at the
Mhm.
same time, man, these stories continue to surface. How it just don't, despite all that size, it just doesn't pack the same punch. And we have a story here, and we talked about this for a while. But
Mhm.
it's that the PlayStation 5 will not support 1440 displays after all. So basically, what we're learning is that the native in-game resolution is presumably going to be limited to 1080p.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of PC gamers they do end up using their monitors that can go to 2160.
Right.
And it's you're not going to be able to hook your PlayStation up to that console. And again, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I do not believe this is going to be a problem with the Xbox Series X. Now they go on to say that it is a possibility that a future update will allow it to be able to do so, but it's just more confusing to me as to why it doesn't already do it. And it makes it look even sillier that you have this giant console and
Yeah.
that there should be more room for more shit, and it doesn't, it's not as strong as the competitor. What do you think about this, Jeffrey? Again, you and I have talked about this for a while now, the power differences between the two consoles.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, for
good.
for me personally, it doesn't really matter. I still have a 1080p TV. I haven't upgraded to the 4K. However, I do know some people who have gaming monitors that are a bit disappointed. Uh, it should be noted that you can hook it up to these, but they just won't output at that, which is really stupid. Um,
Yeah.
they should have multiple settings and multiple ways for people to play depending on the hardware they have. That's inexcusable in this day and age, honestly. I mean, if you're gonna put all this power and shit into, a console, then it should be able to take advantage of whatever device you or whatever thing you decide to hook it up to. So
Yeah.
yeah, that seems really lazy. It seems to me like they really want to push the 4K, which I understand because it is, the future and everything. But it's like, well, if you don't have one, then you're just shit out of luck, and that really does kind of suck. Um, but that comes with the growing pains of, transitioning into making 4K a normal thing.
Yeah.
So
I just wonder how
I
much
don't
it's
know.
gonna matter. Like,
Yeah.
if we're gonna have to see. But I think it's
Mhm.
gonna be a big deal if we get to a point where there's comparison videos between Xbox and PlayStation, and Xbox is clearly the console where the games look better and the graphic
Mhm.
resolution is higher and more crisp and more detailed than the PlayStation. I don't
Yep.
necessarily, and see that's the thing. That's why these stories are kind of misleading to me because I don't think that's going to be the case. Like
I don't think
I
so
don't really
either.
think there's going to be a noted difference between looking at Xbox Series X graphics or PlayStation 5. Now, again, I don't know this yet. You're finally starting to see reviews coming out for both consoles. But now, I'm just kind of thinking, it. When does this matter for Sony? Because it really kind of puts
Right.
into perspective a question that people in the video game industry have been talking about and wondering for a long time: is how much do graphics matter? From a standpoint of if you want to have a AAA huge selling title, does it
Mhm.
always have to be the most graphically powerful thing um, in the world, And I kind of
Right.
don't know. I think that graphics don't matter quite as much as people think that they
I don't think
do.
they do.
Performance does. And there was a video of the PlayStation 5 like booting up Spider-Man Miles Morales in like
Yep.
under 2 seconds or something crazy like that.
Yeah,
So
it was pretty insane.
yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how much this actually does affect them.
And I think it's also the case of coming from a different generation. You and I came from the 8-bit generation, with the Nintendo, and then later in the 16-bit, thing with the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo and so on. So we have seen graphics improve, but I think we are more likely to be tolerant of lesser graphics because we grew up with them. So like I
Right.
never judge a game based on graphics, right? Because I grew up with pixels represented people,
Yeah, yeah,
instead
yeah,
of
yeah.
these realistic models. So graphics don't mean crap to me. So as long as the gameplay is fun and I'm enjoying playing it, then that's all that matters to me. But for somebody who has grown up with, these high detailed graphics, you know, they might be a little bit more inclined to care. So I think it just depends on who you talk to and what frame of reference they have.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, again, I don't know how much these stories matter right now.
Hmm.
Especially knowing that PlayStation pretty much already sold all of their pre-orders, and who knows when anyone's actually gonna receive a PlayStation 5.
Right.
But it's clearly not gonna affect sales.
Mm-mm.
And again, I kind of think that this is a strategic maneuver, and I said this in one of our podcasts maybe about a month or so ago now, that I think this is a part of the tactic for Sony going forward. That they might not have the most powerful console visually, but it's still
Right.
gonna look incredible. And on top of that, you're gonna have content available to you on PlayStation that will not be available to you anywhere else. So
Right.
that's their gamble, that's their bet, that's what they're banking on. And frankly,
Right.
I don't think that bet's wrong. Like they're gonna get people
No, I
that are
don't
gonna,
think so
yeah,
either.
they're gonna get people that are gonna criticize them for a little while.
Hmm.
Just on pure, oh, you don't have the power that Xbox does. But
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna matter too much in the long run.
I
Um,
don't either.
yeah, I really don't. And we're right around the corner, man. And we'll know more because we're gonna have reviews, people talking about the load times. Is
Right.
it graphically more powerful? Is it less powerful?
Hmm.
There's a lot that goes into this, man. So,
Really is.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're the clock is ticking, and we won't have to worry or wonder about any of this much longer. But Jeffrey, let's segue to the whole reason that you and I even like
Yes.
made it a point to do this show today.
Okay.
So it if you don't know, Jeffrey and I both fashion ourselves something of writers, you know. We've been known to partake in the art of writing characters and trying to build worlds and stuff. And just recently they released a official website for Final Fantasy 16, the next installment of the Final Fantasy franchise. And
Yep.
Jeffrey, as I was looking over this and as I was learning about the new details, when we first talked about Final Fantasy 16, I was saying that I hadn't seen enough to know that they're not going to mess this up. Seeing as how they essentially did do that with other Final Fantasy franchises and Kingdom Hearts. My faith in the company to manage, these new times is questionable. And Final Fantasy, frankly, for a long time, hadn't felt like Final Fantasy to me. It didn't give me the feeling that it did growing up when I was playing Final Fantasy VIII and roaming through Ballum Garden, or Final Fantasy X being in Spirit, playing Blitzball. Like, the worlds from then after never really sucked me into them. And I wanted to kind of showcase this website today because everything that I have seen so far is actually starting to get me really excited. Now, I don't know if it's, my inner fanboy just hoping for something from my childhood to be good again, but looking at the details and what we know and what we're learning about the world and the lore that they're trying to build, I'm really excited about what they're doing. And again, Jeffrey, I know I'm rambling. I'll pass the mic to you in a second, but I had this thought go through my head that maybe, potentially, Final Fantasy 16 has the potential to do for the fantasy genre in video games what I feel Game of Thrones did for television. And the reason why I mention that is because I kind of feel like they're taking a lot of nods from Game of Thrones, or from the Song of Ice and Fire series, and how they're trying to remodel and rebrand the world of Final Fantasy. And we get to this point where they start talking about the realms in this world. And there are all these different kingdoms that have these crystal mountains that produce ether. Or the aether, I don't know exactly how it's pronounced, but all of the kingdoms use the aether to basically use magic. So I love that the world is already informing you of the gameplay mechanics. That's how you're going to use magic of all different sorts. Those same mother crystals bestow what's called an icon onto a person, and this person is called the dominant, and each kingdom has their own dominant, their own history, their own flags, which I'm showing here on camera, their own backgrounds. And that's why, Jeffrey, I started to wonder, I wonder if Final Fantasy took a look at George R.R. Martin's work and what he did for fantasy as a whole. Because Martin didn't reinvent the wheel. Dragons and slaves and empires and castles, like nothing in a Game of Thrones or a Song of Ice and Fire is inherently new. But they did it in such a way that it reintroduced fantasy concepts and genres and tropes back into the public lexicon. Jeffrey, I'm kind of thinking that Final Fantasy, if pulled off correctly, has the opportunity to do that. It's already fantasies in the title. You already have a rich world of, lore with magic that goes across all the different installments, summons. They have a chance to ground it in medieval fantasy and then slowly kind of implement the more magical elements of the world. And I feel like that they could be really onto something here. So, Jeffrey, after reading the website and after everything that you have seen and heard and researched upon, what are your thoughts on Final Fantasy 16? And do you feel any different about it now than you did, say, when you saw the trailer for the first time?
When I saw the trailer, and I know we were that time when we picked out our most anticipated games, I put this at number 1 while you were a little hesitant. And I think the reason I put it at 1 was because I saw the potential even in that trailer. I knew that they had done like something. We weren't sure what that something was yet, but there was definitely a different air to this than there have been in previous games. And I really wanted to go back to the medieval fantasy setting, and it really feels like they've done that. I mean, if you look at the names of the characters, you've got Clive Rosefield, and Joshua Rosefield, and I think the woman's name is Jill. Like, they're very like European, British royalty names, or even like Hebrew names for like, holy names. So I think that's really cool. It gives it, that grounded feel to it. There's also talk of some plight that's in the world that could be very similar to like perhaps the Black Plague.
I did. Yeah. So I can actually find it. I'll just go ahead and read some of this for you guys. The land of Valistia is studded with mother crystals, glittering mountains of crystal that tower over the realms around them, blessing them with aether. For generations, people have flocked to these beacons to take advantage of their blessing, using the aether to conjure magics and let them live lives of comfort and plenty. So again, it's already setting up that concept of aether coming from the mother crystal, and aether is, I'm assuming, how you're going to be able to use magic. And if you remember, in Final Fantasy 15, I mean, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others, the magic system was just non-existent. Like, it was there, but there was never, ever a reason for you to refine and use magics. Like, it made it a chore rather than something you want to do, and they're already kind of taking that out of it. It says great powers have grown up around each mother crystal, and an uneasy peace has long resigned between them. Yet now the peace falters as the spread of the blight threatens to destroy their dominions. So, you're right, it does seem as though there's an existential threat facing this world. And you mentioned the names too. I guess Final Fantasy has never really had a lot of Japanese sounding names. At least, which is weird because it's the most popular JRPG.
Yeah, I know, right? That is kind of strange.
So another thing I didn't even think to look at is this map right here. It kind of shows you all the different cities and their crystals. Like, there's a mountain. I don't know if you can see my mouse. There's a mountain right here with a city right next to it. Like, I love this stuff. I love fantasy worlds. I love lore. I love building of the characters and the intricacies between nations and the intrigue that goes into it. And I'm telling you, for me, Final Fantasy growing up was pivotal. Like, that's why I fell in love with stories in general, no matter what kind of medium it was. But it started with Final Fantasy, and my love for the fantasy genre took its next step once I started reading the A Song of Ice and Fire books. And it's like everything the adult version of myself wanted in a fantasy. And now, reading all this new content for Final Fantasy 16, I feel like my past is trying to embrace my present, and I'm hopeful. You know what I mean? It feels like this is the right territory for Final Fantasy to do something that is both in its wheelhouse and can reinvent itself at the same time with brand new mechanics, fighting combat, how you implement the magic. Now I have the hope that I didn't necessarily before, Jeffrey. I'm liking the way that it's moving.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. They're able to weave in the old and the new because, I mean, if you look as far back as the original Final Fantasy, it was about the Warriors of Light who came together with the crystals, and using the crystals again as a, as a driving force.
Right.
They've tried that before with what was it, Final Fantasy Type 0, and it was terrible. Like, just the gameplay and the story was okay, if not a little off. But I mean, it seems like they've. I guess what I'm trying to say is they've learned from their previous mistakes, or at least I hope they have. And I really hope that they've invested time into these other nations, because we're seeing all this. So I hope, we get to visit each one of these nations. I hope they all have their own, flair to them. Obviously there's political strife between them all at some point, I'm sure. All these story elements could combine to create something really amazing.
Right.
So I'm really looking forward to that. Just the fact that Rosaria actually has 2 icons, because there's Joshua, who's the Phoenix, but then Ifrit shows up.
Right, and we don't necessarily
as a dark
know.
icon, which shouldn't even be able to happen. So it's like, well, how is that happening then? Because there's only supposed to be one. So I don't know. There's a lot of intriguing storylines, ways that this could go.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm really excited for it. The only thing I want, and again, I'm not faulting them for not having it yet. Again, I know this is still. I mean, we might be 2 or 3 years away from actually seeing this game, maybe. So, I mean, who knows when we'll actually have our hands on it. The only other thing that can really, really get me in its corner is to continue with more good characters.
Yeah.
Because when I think of Final Fantasy, I think of a ragtag group of a bunch of different people from different backgrounds, different races, and when I say races, I mean like types that don't even have to be human. They could be elves, like whatever. Different people with varying personalities and goals coming together. Like, I want to feel like I have an ensemble of characters that I love and feel for. And I think that they have the potential to do that again. I'm just hoping to see more. Like, I want to see a varied cast of characters that are colorful with, actual emotions and things that define them, and flaws, and all the things that make for a good story is what I feel Final Fantasy has kind of been missing for a while now. So, also, another thing, a powerful female character, I think is,
yes.
So again,
desperately needed. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, like even right here, it says Jill was taken from her homeland, as a teenager. So basically, she's kind of been pulled around, kind of moved and shoved around. I'm hoping that at some point we get another female character that, it has some weight and some power and some meaning and isn't just there to be the damsel in distress. I think that it's just tired now. I think that's the one criticism I have of JRPGs is that a lot of what they do is kind of rooted in the past and in their older traditions. So I want a brand new Final Fantasy for everyone to be able to fall in love with, love with this series the way that I did it, where it rewards you for putting time and effort into the game and into the characters and into the world. And
Yep.
yeah, I'm way more hopeful than I was, man. And again, I know I'm fucking blabbering. Interrupt me whenever you need to. But the fact that this is going to be a hack and slash, like this is Devil May Fantasy, dude. Like this is this is going to continue to further that action RPG genre, and I'm hoping that
which I actually like.
Me too.
I do have a negative about that though.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's just that I hope this game doesn't suffer from what I have termed Sora syndrome, which is you're only controlling one character. You know, Kingdom Hearts Sora. You basically play the entire Kingdom Hearts series pretty much through his eyes with very little, exception in terms of like combat and stuff. So I really hope that we are able to switch party members and that each party member feels distinctly different. So I mean, if we're just controlling, one sword wielder all the time, I'd be a little miffed. But I guess if the characters are good enough to stand on their own in terms of character development and stuff, I'll be a little bit more forgiving. But I hope we're just not playing Clive and that's it.
That's it. And that kind of gets to the point of what I was saying. Like, Final Fantasy to me is a bunch of characters coming together for one goal. And yes, every Final Fantasy has the main protagonist, be it Cloud, Squall, Zidane, Titus. We understand that, and we know that Clive is going to fill that role in this story. But the other characters are just as important. And I agree with you, though. You don't want it to feel too much like, oh, I'm the hero, and I'm going to save the day. And again, I make the comparison to like Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, and they will kill characters. Like what happens in real life. People that you know and love die, and bad shit happens to them sometimes.
That's the other thing. I want some dark shit to happen.
Me too, man. Dude. I want an adult like a real adult-oriented HBO-style Final Fantasy.
Right. And I don't want just a murder at the beginning, like, because that was the whole thing with 15, right? Was that Noctis's father had been murdered, and that basically set him up to do the whole thing. No, I want murders, not like left and right. I'm not expecting George R.R. Martin levels of murder, but like I want something to go down, whether it's murder from, backstabbing plots or from the plight itself, something. Also, I was thinking, because you were talking about character, what if we got a character from every single nation? Because there's 6 nations down there.
Oh, I did like that.
From each one, that would be badass.
And see, another thing that they even mentioned in the world is that, the dominant has an icon associated with it, and they can summon the icon of that nation. Well,
so what if when you
So, but when and when you read through the comments or the information about the different kingdoms, the people, the natives of different kingdoms, treat the dominants different depending on what kingdom you're in. So there are some where, like, if you're the dominant, you're praised and worshipped and all this other shit. And then sometimes they might kill your ass.
You're locked up.
Or you're just used as a weapon of war. And that adds a really interesting dynamic if you're starting to bring people that go to another part of this world and they experience the culture shock of just being somewhere different where they don't have the same values and beliefs and customs and how those people gel together. No, that's a great point, Jeffrey. And that's why I wanted to talk about all of this, because all of this information has opened it up to where there's room to wonder about stuff and think about all the different avenues that they can move in now. And it's not hollow like kind of how Final Fantasy 13 series felt. Like, with Lightning. After a while, it's like, dude, you have no idea what you're doing with this, and it shows.
No, and they didn't. They had no clue. And that's the thing. I'm hoping that they have taken all their mistakes, even the mistakes they made in the 7 remake. I'm hoping that they took, and kind of and are really attempting to push the series forward because like you said, a lot of times Japan gets stuck in their own ways and they only greenlight things, that are traditional because they know that works. I'm hoping that the development team, good God, I can't talk today, are given a little bit more freedom to experiment, and hopefully, like you said, they've taken cues from George R. R. Martin, maybe you know the J.R.R. Tolkien, like
Mm-hmm.
all these different places, and really brought it into something special. Because there's nothing more that irritates me more than a a a concept which is amazing and sounds amazing, but is hollow as crap. And that's how I felt 15 was, because they really tried to push 15 with the whole like movie and the backstory of all these different things that you had to like go meta and look up all this different shit for, and it ultimately amounted to nothing
Yeah.
because it just wasn't interesting. There wasn't enough actual weight behind these characters and behind these locations to really get you invested. I don't feel this way about 16, and I hope that rings true. I hope that they really do put the time and effort into these characters and these locations and hopefully come not only with a great story, but with a great combat system to complement it. So we'll see.
Can I tell you what I feel the biggest question is now going forward?
Sure.
Is
Yeah, go for
what
it.
kind of game is this? Is it
Yeah.
going to be an open world game? Is it going to be like a traditional Final Fantasy, which is more linear storytelling, like on rails, kind of moving you and guiding you towards the next plot point, story point? Because Final Fantasy 15, they really did try to, at least for a point in time, I mean, really, they did it with 13 and 15, to be honest. They tried to have the best of both worlds, a linear storytelling experience and an open world experience at the same time. Again, the whole benefit of a brand new console generation, which we are upon, is upon us, is that you should have the capability to open up things more where you don't have to choose between one or the other. Like, in my mind, you should be able to have a big open world. So imagine this. Like, imagine that Final Fantasy 7 or 8, but on a next-gen console. Like, you should be able to leave a town, have something resembling a world map, kind of how what happened in Final Fantasy 15, and then once you enter into a city or a town, it actually has like a world with shops and places that you can go into. Pretty much, basically, kind of the opposite of what Final Fantasy VII Remake did.
Right.
Because,
and like you said, I think it depends, and that's kind of the issue because, like with 15, the open world was pretty much empty, right? You just went from area to area. Occasionally, there were some enemies and whatever, and yeah, some of the towns were populated and stuff, but like everything was extremely limited, and but then that begs the question: are we just going to have a bunch of side content if they do decide to open up the world? And if they do, how much of that is going to be filler
right,
compared to the actual story? I don't There's all these other things to consider when opening up to an open world situation that I don't I honestly don't know if Square Enix is ready for that. Honestly, because they've tried before and not done so well. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but it just seems like a lot of the open world designs that flood these games, like like Rockstar and all these other things, they work, but they're tedious at the end of the day.
yeah.
And I don't want a bunch of nonsense and tedium weighing down an RPG. So I don't know. I'm I'd be open to the idea, but I'd also be very skeptical and very hesitant. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want it to be something. Again, it's tough because you have to strike a weird balance. I don't want the game to hold my hand and tell me where to go and what to do, and now do this and now do that. I do want a level of freedom, but I don't want too much. Like, I still want them to be able to tell me a streamlined story that they're trying to tell. You know what I mean? I want, that kind of experience. And I've said that on this show before. Like, there's a lot, I feel like, in today's gaming culture, there's a lot of shame when a game is very linear. Because it's like, open it up, let the player be in decision and control every little thing, blah, blah, blah. Well, but I'm not saying that those types of games don't have their place, and I love to play those types of games. But
it doesn't need to be every game.
Imagine if you had input to make Kratos like a kind, loving dude that spares his enemies and shit like that.
It would just go against his character.
So, I'm down for a developer's creative freedoms to still be intact and deliver a certain kind of experience. So,
right.
I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I am too.
Jeffrey, I think we've come to the end of another show, man.
Oh, man. Yeah, we have. Look at that.
Wow. So, man, we've done another one. We will do another one of these. Until then, tell them how they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at JeffroRed, so at JEFFRORED. You can drop by and chat about video games or books or movies or whatever the hell's on your mind. You can send me anything.
Awesome. My name is Cody Lashley. You can find me on Twitter at CodyLac, CodyLac, and every Tuesday night and 30 minutes after the Panthers play on Sunday on the C3 Carolina Cat Chronicles podcast. And that's it for me. Until next time, peace and love.
Peace, guys.